So as I said, my name is Rama Isa, and I'm the Executive Director of the Arab American Association of New York. And I'm so excited to be here tonight to really showcase our diverse culture. We are Arabs, all of us in this room, but we come from such different traditions and countries, and there's so much richness and diversity in our language, religion, traditions. And it's really amazing to be here, especially today in community with all of you, given everything that we had to endure in the last year and a half. Tomorrow, the oral arguments are going to be heard at the Supreme Court. And so we've all been very anxious, but it's really amazing that the night before, we all get to sit together and spend this time together and celebrate our heritage, that we get to share our heritage and our culture with all of you. So without further ado, we're going to move this program as quickly as we can. So I want to bring up to the stage Nancy Al-Bilal, who is the president and CEO of the Arab American Family Support Center, our sister organization.
Thank you so much, Rama. Ahlan wa sahlan bikum. Welcome, everyone. Borough President Adams, thank you for promoting a culture of community service. That is the theme of this evening. Our honorees for this evening exemplify the culture of community service that we are promoting in partnership with you. We are here today to say thank you to our honorees for making a difference in the lives of those who matter the most, vulnerable populations. Community service in the form of giving or kindness to fellow community members and new neighbors confronting difficult circumstances is a vital community asset. The stock market, which is not far from here, is divided into 11 major sectors, from finance, technology to energy, healthcare, and real estate, and so on. Arab Americans have been playing key roles and contributing to all of these sectors for over a century. Today, we are here to honor the contribution of those that are giving to the third sector. That's the nonprofit sector. That's community service. That's volunteerism. They are motivated by the desire to improve the lives of fellow community members and new neighbors. They are motivated to make a difference in their community. Many of them, including some that are in this room today, are anonymously giving to the nonprofit sector. They are using private wealth for public good. Our borough president understands the vital role that the third sector plays. He is tapping to organizations like Arab American Family Support Center and others that are here today, because he knows that we are serving as the bedrock of community and the vital resources that exist in Brooklyn. We understand the service needs of communities that the public sector needs to address. We have an affinity for the people that the public sector wants to reach. We are delivering outcomes that the public sector finds it hard to deliver on its own. We speak up and advocate for those they cannot do so on their own. Such work and service dovetail with the borough president's public service and work. We are honored to be here with you today and appreciate the borough president's partnership with us. the Arab American Family Support Center Board that are here today. Please stand, board members. Staff, please stand, staff. And volunteers. We are here to stand in partnership with the Borough President and the other sponsors of this wonderful and important event, the Arab American Association and Al Salam Club. أهلا وسهلا فيكم.
Thank you, Nancy. I want to bring up next John Abi Habib, who is ambassador of Lebanon, who's the Brooklyn's ambassador of Lebanon. Please help me welcome John Abi Habib.
I got a new title now. Aribe. So, hello everyone. We're waiting actually for our Borough President to come. Dear committee members and esteemed friends. Over 12 years ago, I stood in this room as an organizer for the first Lebanese Heritage Day. And since, we have been holding Heritage Days like today and the other years past also. Today I stand here as an honorary consul of Lebanon to continue this beautiful event with all of you, highlighting not only the Lebanese heritage and the Lebanese American contributions to New York City, as well as the great Middle Eastern and Arab American contributions to Brooklyn and New York City at large. I send regards on behalf of the Lebanese Consul General Majdi Ramadan and the Egyptian Ambassador Dr. Hasham Nakib. Millions of Americans trace their roots, the hyphen, as the Borough President calls it, to Egyptians as its growing influence in our city, Yemenis, Syrians, Iraqis, Palestinians, and many more Arab-speaking immigrants such as Moroccans, Algiers, and Tunisians. Your contributions to our economy, finance, civil and civic leadership is highlighted today here in this room. From our honorees, their contributions, from the attendees, all of you, and their commitment, and the past honorees present with us today and not. If you don't mind, the past honorees from the last few years, can you stand if we have any one of them here? Is David in or? No? He's not in? Okay. So you make us proud and make what America is today. One nation with multinational traditions, habits, love, and engagement. Freedom speaks loud in your presence. I think we're waiting for Dr. Jacobs to come as the keynote speaker, and we all know about the Jacob family and their contributions to our the philanthropic and the hyphen in each one of us. You, Dr. Jacobs, when she comes in, we'll make sure she knows that. You could come in. Our Borough President, everyone. So I was speaking like 20 minutes about you before. Okay. So Dr. Jacob will be with us tonight, and then I want to contribute also her family's legacy in a true example of philanthropy and a hyphen in each one of us. Someone like her and her family have done too much to our community at large and to the American dream. In addition, I want to thank also the superstar Magdal Masri. He's with us tonight, and he might be also performing a little bit for us if we ask him to. Okay, so in conclusion, my sincere thanks goes out to our Board of President, Eric Adams, to his love to the hyphen in each one of us, and most importantly, hosting us tonight. Thank you, and thank you. My truthful appreciation goes to Sandra, Candace, and Kristen. You go through so much on a day-to-day basis, but you do it with care. Thank you for helping us. The beautiful, diverse committee, which you're going to meet as we go along, you give and you give and you give, you never stop. To that, I'm grateful I was part of your team. Mabruk, congratulations to everyone on a successful Arab American Heritage Day. Keep it alive, please.
So I have the honor now to introduce our Brooklyn Borough President. But I want to say a couple things about Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams. I've known Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams for many years, and I know that he's been a great ally to the Arab American community and Muslim communities all across the city. When I was working at AFSC, he would show up to every iftar, to every event that we put together, and he really created this Arab American Heritage Day. And we are so thankful for him to, highlight the beauty and the diversity of our culture and our tradition. And so please help me welcome Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams.
Ahlan wa salam. I hope I got that right. Let me say this. During these times that we live in, and the goal that we had, we're seeing it come alive. For many years, this space was not used by Arab-speaking Americans, immigrants, undocumented, all. And now more and more we're seeing that, and that brings me great joy that you realize that regardless of what comes out of the White House in Brooklyn, this is your house. And we have to remain vigilant. There's a story that I always told about, as a child, a scientific experiment I learned. And I want to share it with you, and I want you to really think about it. If you were to take a frog and place it in a pot of boiling water, it would immediately jump out. But if you were to take that same frog and place it in cold water and turn the temperature up 1 degree at a time, it would stay there until it boils to death. That's where we are as Americans. We don't realize the temperature of hate, the temperature against those who don't look the same or talk the same or walk the same, those who wear a hijab, a kufi, a yarmulke, those who pray one way, those who sing another. 1 degree at a time, we are turning up the temperature and don't realize that we're boiling away the American dream and American experience. We must have an internal thermostat that does not allow 1 degree of any lifestyle in this country. Complacency that we say, well, it's just one incident, it's just one swastika, it's just one desecration of a mosque, it's just one attack of a woman that wears a hijab, it's just one statement, it's just one Muslim man being attacked while he walked down the street in Crown Heights, or one Jewish person attacked. It's just one incident. It's not one incident. It's the slow increase of the heat that will take away what makes this country great. And so when we do an Arab American celebration, when we do an Irish American celebration, a Dominican American celebration, a Pakistani American celebration, a Yemen American celebration, when we hold these celebrations, it is our way of saying we too belong to America. And that's why the theme of protect the hyphen is so important. It's that dash that sits between our cultures that makes us different from anywhere else on the planet. This is the only country where you are encouraged to hold on to your culture and infuse it into the American experience. We never remove the hyphen from being an American. It is what America is. That's what it is. And you bring with it what makes us great. You can walk into a Jewish restaurant, have Chinese food cooked by an Arab-speaking chef. And out of that creation comes something great. I think about being in the southern part of the country where my family is from, and I was trying to figure out, when the tractor broke down, I was trying to figure out how to move a large quantity of hay across the farm. And I was able to hook up a motorcycle to the trailer and move it over. And once I completed the task, I realized that I learned that from being in Cambodia, where I saw them use a tut-tut because they don't use vehicles, they have to use motorcycles. And because of that experience, I was able to complete a task. Why is that important? Because the solution to global problems are when we all come together and bring our cultural experience to help us solve the problem. You cannot solve a global problem only being in one block or one location, physically and intellectually and spiritually and emotionally. It is about us all coming together, taking your experience, your culture, your know-how, your desire, coming with mine, and we merge and come a global solution. You can't solve a global problem if you are a local thinker and a local believer. Our children must be experienced in diversity. That's our secret weapon. Our children can't only know people who look like them, talk like them, walk like them, eat the same food, live the same lifestyle. No. They need to go into a mosque, a synagogue, a Baptist church, a Buddhist temple. They need to know why a woman wears a hijab or a yarmulke. Why do we kneel when we pray? Why do we do certain things? Why do we pray 4 or 5 times a day? Why do we go to synagogues on Friday? All of those experiences are going to help us create who we ought to be. It is the experience that makes us great. That's why we have these events. I've never had an event in here of the heritage events that I did not walk out richer, more learned, more pleased with who and what we are. So you honor us by coming here. And even when you leave, the residue of your energy will remain in Borough Hall. and Borough Hall will continue to be a place that welcome will be written in every language in this borough. 47% of Brooklynites speak a language other than English at home. Think about that. Really, it's over 40%. The other 7 or 8% didn't open the door because they thought it was the bill collector. The majority of this borough are non-English speakers. We're the United Nations of America. We are what America represents. And we should hold that with pride. And we should carry that pride with us every day to show we know how to do it. The way goes Brooklyn, goes New York. The way goes New York, goes America. The way goes America, goes the globe. You're the best that the globe has to offer. You're Arab-speaking Americans in Brooklyn, USA. 2 types of people in America, those who live in Brooklyn and those who wish they could. You're the lucky ones. Thank you.
Good evening, folks. While the Borough President and our chairs are taking photos, it'll be my privilege to introduce the honorees. My name is Joe El-Hilu, and I'm here on behalf of the Salam Club. Often, when someone grows up with an older brother or a younger brother who's well known, they become known as the little sister. In this case, I think it's the siblings that should watch out. Our honoree, Tahani Abushi, is not only an attorney, she's on the board of the New York Civil Liberties Union, she's a litigator, she was most recently part of the group that protected our immigrants at JFK Airport, and she has been fighting for us, literally, since she was admitted to the bar. It's with great pleasure I introduce and call up Tahani Abushi and thank her for her service. Okay. Our next honoree, again, there are some people that you grow up knowing that they've been there always. They're so active in the community that every time you turn around, someone's got them on their lips. In this case, the man that we're honoring next didn't come from here, he didn't grow up here, but yet this is a man who everybody thinks has always been here. He's become so ingrained, so active in our community. Reverend Pastor Khader El Yatim, if you could please come up. There's nothing I can say about that man. Everybody. The borough president spoke about one of the best, the greatest things we can do, which is to remember our culture and our heritage. The other great thing we can do is take care of our young and our children, to instruct them and have them grow, because as they're bent as kids, they will grow as adults. Our next honoree is a public school teacher, founder of the Egyptian Arts and Cultural Organization, and a very active member in the charitable end of our community. At this time, I'd ask Dr. Jahan El-Habashi to come up. I mentioned before how hard it is to grow up with an older brother, or a younger brother, a football player and an attorney. Think how much harder it is to grow up with two parents that are so well known in the community that literally everyone knows who they are, where they are, and they've watched you grow up. Our next honoree, Liz Jabara, has exactly that problem. Her father, Ahmed, and her mother are well known to the community, various boards, various community organizations, and charity. And she has come up in that same way. She worked as an ESL teaching assistant, an exam tutor, has worked with the AAFSC for the kids, for the immigrants, and throughout all of this has raised twins. She's got an active family, she's a mother, and as I said, she continues the charitable work of her parents. Liz Jabara, if you could come up, please. Everyone has seen, I think, the TV show Blue Bloods, and everybody expects it's about Irish police officers. But we have our own Blue Bloods. Our next honoree, Ahmed Nasser, is a detective in the NYPD. He was the founder of the Muslim Officers Association, and his son is currently at the academy, carrying on his tradition. Ahmed, thank you. Most folks spend their college years partying, drinking, having a good time, sometimes studying. Our next honoree spent his college years as a community liaison for Senator Martin Golden. He was the liaison to our community during his college years, graduated, and continued to work with the senator. He's now an active attorney, a member of the board of directors of St. Nicholas Home for the Aged, a member of the board of directors, past member of the board of directors of the Salam Club, is a commissioner of the elections for the city of New York. Simon Shamoun. This one I don't know anything about. Joseph. Our next honoree is an organization, or actually a place where people can go in the old style, sit, have coffee, and meet, and find help when they need it. It's a place here in downtown Brooklyn, the Yemen Cafe. We have with us today Mahmoud El-Subai, who is a representative of the Yemen Cafe, and he's here on their behalf. The cafe and Mahmoud have literally taken his community, the Yemeni community, to heart. He steers them, he watches them, he helps them when they come, because when you get here, it's a little overwhelming if you don't know where to go and what to do. And for that, we thank Mahmoud, his compatriots, and the Yemen Cafe. Linda Jacobs, right? Oh, okay. If I can have all of the honorees up for a group picture with the borough president.
Another round of applause for our honorees. We're going to introduce our keynote speaker. So everyone, if you could please take a seat. Thank you. So our keynote speaker for the night is Dr. Linda Jacobs. Dr. Linda Jacobs is a New York-based independent scholar and author. She holds a PhD in Near Eastern archaeology and anthropology and spent many years working on archaeological excavations and economic development projects in the Middle East. She's currently at work on a demographic study of all the 19th century Syrian Lebanese colonies in the United States. As a proud Syrian, I want to thank Dr. Linda for doing this amazing research. Dr. Jacobs sits on the boards of several Middle Eastern organizations and is committed to promoting knowledge of Middle Eastern culture and heritage in the United States. Please help me welcome Dr. Linda Jacobs.
Well, oh, thank you. How nice. Thank you. Very nice of you. Well, after all of those rousing speeches, it's wonderful to be here. I have to stand on my tiptoes so I can see over the podium here. I'm an author. I'm 100% Lebanese American. All four of my grandparents came from Lebanon. And I'm a scholar of the Syrian Lebanese diaspora in the United States, particularly in the 19th century. So after all this is over, if anyone has any questions about that topic, you are welcome to ask me, because I really have looked at all of the Syrians in the United States, Syrian Lebanese in the United States, so I know them quite well. I wrote a book called Strangers in the West, which is about the Lower West Side colony of Manhattan. Everyone knew about the colony in Brooklyn, both the one in Atlantic Avenue and the one in Bay Ridge that was slightly later. Almost no one knew that there was a thriving colony in Manhattan on the Lower West Side starting in 1880. The first Syrian family to come to the United States came in 1878. They were the Joseph Arbeli family from Damascus by way of Beirut. They did not live in New York. They settled in Maryville, Tennessee, but they started a wave of immigration from Lebanon and from Syria that turned into a kind of flood by the late 19th century. The people on the Lower West Side lived in mid-19th century private homes that had been converted into tenements, and they lived in conditions that were as horrible, if not more horrible, than the ones that you've seen documented on the Lower East Side. 5 to 10 people to a room, often unrelated people, lived together. They lived in tenements with no electricity, of course, no indoor plumbing, so no bathrooms inside, no air because they lived in windowless rooms that had been cut out of these old buildings. They lived on landfill because, maybe you know this already, but Manhattan used to be bounded on the west by Greenwich Street. And in the 19th century, the people started filling in into the Hudson River, so both Washington Street and West Street are built on landfill. Every time the Hudson River flooded, all of the basements and sometimes the first floor of these tenements were underwater. And if you know the author Amin Rihani, he wrote a book in 1911 called The Book of Khalid, in which he describes how he and his partner lived in the basement with their goods because they had a little store, and the first day that they settled down, they were flooded. And 3/4 of their goods and all of their furnishings and their mattresses and their clothes were all soaking wet by the end of the evening. But they had no place else to go. They dried everything out and started again. And this is the way people lived on the Lower West Side for the 2 decades, from 1880 to 1900. There was a horrible infant mortality rate. Mothers died in childbirth. There was a lot of tuberculosis. In fact, it was rampant in all slum areas, but certainly in the Syrian area. There was an adulterated milk epidemic that went on in the 19th and early 20th century, and unbeknownst to the mothers, they were feeding their children chalk rather than milk. So many children, Syrian children, died of malnutrition in the 19th and early 20th century, and it was a really horrible situation. In other cities in the United States where the Syrians went very quickly, by 1890 there were Syrians in every state and territory in the United States, including Alaska and Hawaii. They were living in the same kinds of poor conditions. In Denver, they lived in a part of Denver called the Bottoms, which was on a river that flooded 3 or 4 times a year. Their houses were destroyed. In St. Paul, Minnesota, they lived in a place called the West Side Flats, where they were flooded by the Mississippi River every year. They lived in Boston on a place called an alley called Oliver Place, which had no light, no air, no services. It was never cleaned by the city. They lived in every place in the United States. They lived in these very, very poor conditions. But what saved them from poverty and despair? Well, you can probably guess, all of you being of that tradition. First, their own industriousness. They started out as peddlers, and they became store owners, manufacturers, importers. Second, their religious faith. Most of the 19th century Syrian and Lebanese who came were Christians, but they demanded of their patriarchs in the Old World priests. And from the very beginning, they had visiting priests, itinerant priests, who would take the railroads or take carriages to different communities and perform baptisms, celebrate the liturgy, perform weddings, bring people into the church who had been baptized perhaps in other related churches, and collect money, even though they were poverty-stricken, from each other to build their churches. So the churches that they built or converted were very early in New York, in Boston, in Chicago. They had churches quite early. Third, they made in many of these places self-help organizations. Many of them were religion-based, but not all. They were meant to help each other. So they would, if someone was arrested for something, they would pool their money to hire a lawyer. If someone was too poor to go home to Syria or Lebanon, they would put their money together and buy that person a ticket. If they needed to get someone from Syria to a wife or children to meet their families, they would help them do that. And they also made themselves literary associations. So there were very early literary associations in New York, in Chicago, and in Boston. They got occasional help from American institutions. And this is kind of what I want to talk about because it's such an interesting part of the Syrian experience that people don't know. You've probably heard of Hull House, which was the first settlement house in Chicago, founded by Jane Addams in the mid-19th century. Well, Hull House was about 2 blocks away from the Syrian colony in Chicago. Dennison House in Boston was in the middle of the Syrian colony, another settlement house. There was a Jewish settlement house in St. Paul, Minnesota that became non-sectarian at the turn of the century and served all of the poor. And there was in New York, not a settlement house this early, but what was called a milk station because of the adulterated milk that I told you about. The city got together with some of its the health officials in the city and set up a milk station in the middle of the Syrian colony, not just to provide milk, but to provide child care for people who had to go out and work or peddle, to provide health instruction for people who didn't know English very well. And all of these settlement houses gave people the opportunity to learn English. There were drama societies in all the places, and you see these photographs. Hi. You see these photographs of Syrians performing Shakespeare, performing Twelfth Night, performing Christmas plays, or performing Syrian plays, either in Arabic or in English. They were welcome to all of these settlement houses. The settlement houses were based on a non-condescending and resident model, whereby the people who worked in the settlement house lived in the neighborhood. It was revolutionary for its time, and a very important model that we all, I think, follow now, including the Arab American Family Support Center, in the sense that people are of the community rather than imposed from above. And once their basic needs were met, as we've seen, the Syrians were able to spread their wings. More than a dozen Arabic newspapers appeared in New York in the 19th century, and several other towns in the United States. In Lawrence, Mass., there were 3 newspapers in the early 20th century. I just found out about a newspaper in Minnesota that was published in the first decade of the 20th century as well. So people were publishing Arabic newspapers, and this is not to mention South America, where there were dozens more published. There were books published in Arabic in the 19th and 20th, very early 20th century, including 3 books by a Syrian woman who lived in New Orleans but published in New York, named Afifa Karam. Maybe you've heard of her. Her books have not been translated into English, but she's the subject of a recent dissertation by Elizabeth Saylor, so she's becoming kind of famous now. There were an incredible number of Syrian doctors in the Syrian communities. They either got their training in Beirut or Constantinople, or they came here and immediately enrolled in American medical schools. I have lists and lists and lists of Syrians who came here and went to NYU, went to Columbia, went to Baltimore, went to Philadelphia, and got their medical or dental or pharmacy degrees. And they lived in the Syrian communities and served the Syrians as well as the Americans. And not least, but maybe most interesting in a way, is that the Syrians were avid members of the Masonic lodges in the United States and formed their own Masonic lodge, a Syrian Arabic-speaking Masonic lodge in New York in 1908. But being a member of the Masonic lodge meant that they had friends, both Syrian friends and American friends, all over the United States and all over the world, because there had been Masonic lodges in Lebanon long before. So the first generation was remarkably successful. Many went back to Syria and Lebanon and built homes there, lived on what they had earned, and settled once again in their home village, but the majority stayed here. And the second generation treated America as home. They were sometimes monolingual in English, went to American schools, served in World War I, and spread out all over the country to make their way in this new world. And the next generation, which is my generation, are coming back to our roots and learning about the culture in a way that we have never done before. But none of this would have been possible without first Syrians and Lebanese helping themselves, secondly, helping their fellow Syrians and Lebanese, and third, being part of the larger community of New York and the world that helped them become Americans. Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. Pleasure.
So to close us out this evening, before we go and watch some cultural performances and eat some amazing food, I want to welcome to the stage the chairman of the Arab American Family Support Center, an old friend of mine too, Joseph Boutros.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Joseph Boutros, and I'm honored to be here tonight. I would like to thank Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adam, which I failed to make him stay and dance with the belly dancer. Also, I want to thank his fabulous staff, Sandra Champion, Candice Julian, Kristen Risk. Our gratitude to all of our volunteers, our honorees, Tahani Abboushi, Father Qadr al-Yatim, Dr. Jihan Habashi, Elizabeth Jibara, Ahmed Nasser, Simon Shamaoun, and Yemeni Cafe. I would like also to thank our committee, John Del Giorno, Joseph El-Hel, John Abi Habib, Ahmed Muhammad, Noha Mahmoud, Reem Ramadan, Nancy Bilali, Rama Isa, Dr. Ahmed Jaber, and our keynote speaker, Dr. Linda Jacobs. Many thanks to all the restaurants who donated food. We appreciate all the entertainment. Last, many thanks to our Egyptian superstar Magd al-Masri. We thank also our sponsor, Islam and Ahmed Salawi, Arab American Association of New York, Arab American Family Support Center, Biladi Halal Food, Egyptian American Art and Culture Organization, Salam Club, and finally, thank you all and enjoy the evening. We have a lot of food and entertainment.
So please join us at the Rotunda for a cultural performance. Thank you all.